All right, Travis. So today we are talking about why weight loss is so hard to maintain. As you just started talking about, and I've actually said this off air, you just said this, and I've said this so many times. Um, I always say America doesn't have a weight loss problem, a dieting problem. We understand diets. We have plenty of diets. It's sustainability. It's actually keeping that weight off and focusing on health and so on and so forth. That's the issue. Weight regain is more of the issue than weight loss in the first place. Because I want to say, and you might have some of the research and studies that you're going to pull out during this, but I want to say it's like 95% of people who lose weight gain it back. And
Yeah,
then
it's 85 to 90%. So,
okay,
anyone listening out there, it's the researcher. Her name's Tracy Mann, Mann. She's the one that all of her people, they did all those big studies, and it was like over 31, like a systematic review on 31 studies, and that was the average they came out with. So diets, basically, what we're gonna talk about today, they don't work.
yeah.
And why are we still doing them? And we have to get over the idea of why they don't work and figure out another way to change the way we think as coaches and I guess health enthusiasts is a better way to say it, and
Yeah.
kind of go forward.
Yeah, and I'm excited to get into it too because I think this is it's a hard one to explain for most people. It's a hard one to understand for most people, and I think that we might have, I'm a big fan of telling people diets work better in a cyclical fashion because there are times where we need a calorie deficit. However, a calorie deficit isn't the answer, right? And that's kind of it's a blanket statement a lot of people use on social media, and I'm guilty of it too. I've used it before where people are like asking questions and overcomplicating things, and they'll just be like calorie deficit. And I understand, and it's kind of funny, but there's more to the scenario, and that's what we're going to get into today. So if you want to kind of start us out from the baseline point of what you put together, then we can just kind of get it rolling.
Yeah. So basically, I always like to start with the basics and start really fundamental so people can kind of build on top of that, because I'm a firm believer where you have to really understand function before you can actually overcome dysfunction in the body. And so many people don't. And just look at the current situation that's going on with coronavirus right now. People just don't know how the body works. They're listening to whatever anyone says on the news, even though that person might be saying something that's crazy. So I think it's really important that people have a better understanding. So let's think about what's fats. Okay, so fat is pretty much stored energy. Okay, when we consume more food or calories than we burn off, basically what happens is we store that. Okay, we store it in something called adipocytes, which is adipose tissue. You hear the word triglyceride, and you might see that in like chemical blood chemistry analysis. And what is a triglyceride? Well, the name is in what it says. It's 3 fatty acids, hence the tri, which is held together by a glycerol backbone. Okay, so that's pretty much what fat is on the body. And I don't know if you've ever seen a pound of fat, what it looks like. It's actually disgusting. It's big. And I always like to, I don't like to joke, but I imagine it's like, the person that's got 200 or 300 pounds of fat on them. I just can imagine what that looks like. Yeah. And I think they've done it. I think they've shown it in liposuction bags. It's pretty gross. But also another point and I promise I won't go down any more rabbit holes, but this is the last one. You have to understand also the first law of thermodynamics, meaning that energy, it's never created or destroyed. It's just transferred from one source to another. So if you eat something, you either store it or you burn it off. And that's where that energy equation of the calories in minus calories out equals weight loss comes from. And there's a lot of issues with that equation. And that's what, it's kind of become the centralized dogma of nutrition these days, where listen, eat more, exercise more, and you'll lose weight. And even as much as people know that that's not how it works, that's still what most of these dieting coaches and templates, they still fall back on. Eat more, eat less, and exercise more. I'm sure you see that, right?
Yeah, and it's actually funny that you, as I was reviewing this, because just recently on another podcast, somebody asked a question, and I brought up G-Flux, which was something people talked about a lot previously, and it's just kind of this conversation of energy flux, and really the idea of eating more and doing more to achieve the actual look that you're after in a sustainable way. So I was excited to see that you put that in here because I think it's a good conversation to have with people, and that's why I said before too, like, deficits, it's not that they don't work, it's just that it's not the whole picture, it's not the answer, it's not something that's ongoing. It has to be a temporary cyclical thing that you implement. and you have to understand why and when and how to implement that.
Right. Right. And it's basically, it's a periodized approach. So if you remember in the grand scheme of things, if you are inducing a calorie deficit, that's a stressor on the body. You can't have a stressor always being applied, because the body will actually get used to that stressor and adapt. So that's why you have to have periods of, deficit, maintenance, recovery. And, they use the analogy of a sports season is the best way. Athletes don't play sports all year. They need to rest. They need to recover. They need to get better for the next season. That's a very simplistic way to explain it, but that's what the body needs as well. But in getting back to why weight loss is so hard, or why only 5 to 10% of dieters are able to keep the weight off, is because the body will quickly adapt when it loses a certain amount of weight, and it will adapt by trying to regain that lost weight. And how does it do that? Basically, two primary means. It increases hunger, and then it slows down a person's basal metabolic rate. Okay, so basal metabolic rate is a large percentage of the calories that you burn each day. It's about 70%, and you don't have control over that. So this is where it always kind of makes me laugh, where people are like, listen, I'm not losing any more weight. I'm just going to eat less and exercise more. Well, your body's just going to compensate by lowering your basal metabolic rate even more. And this is why people don't lose weight. So let's just use a typical number for an example. Let's just say someone's burning 2,000 calories and they're eating 1,500. Okay, so they're at a 500 calorie deficit. Eventually, the body's going to lower what their body's burning to that 1,500, where now they're no longer in a deficit. They've lowered their BMR to that. And what do? They exercise more, or they eat less. And now the body over time is just going to compensate and lower their BMR to match that total again. And this is how people get into body fat overshooting, where they continuously keep doing this, and then they stop dieting and their metabolisms are so slowed down because their BMRs are at a snail's pace, and they gain all this weight, and then they can never get that weight off. So that's the important concept, that you really don't want to be fighting your physiology past a certain point. It's usually about 5 to 10% of someone's weight. When you get that point, that's when these protective mechanisms kick in. And everyone will tell you, like, yeah, the first 10 pounds was easy. And then after that, or for 15 pounds, then it got harder. And this is such a, it's kind of a difficult concept to wrap your head around, but it's very simple. And, don't keep banging your head against the wall trying to do the same thing, looking for a different result.
Yeah. This is actually kind of why I think, some of the, we've put so many people through reverse diets at this point. And I really think that the people who see the most positive body composition changes during a reverse diet are CrossFitters, because a lot of times CrossFit is a work capacity style of training, right? Like, here's your time, get as much work as you can done. And we start fueling these athletes more, and guess what? Within that time frame, they get more and more done. Versus somebody who's following a bodybuilding program, it's very stationary. So you're still doing the same amount of reps and sets. You might be able to do some more weight when you have more fuel, but your general volume doesn't change too much. Whereas a CrossFit athlete might increase their volume tremendously because they're doing so much in that window. And then the other side of it is, like you said, BMR goes up, NEAT goes up. So you're walking and stepping and talking and moving more just naturally. And we see these changes, and people are like, oh, they're just hyper responders. They got lucky. And it's like, no. When they eat more, whether they realize it or not, they're doing more. And that's why they have that response to a reverse diet. And I think the problem with that is people stop at, you have to eat more to lose weight, which is very counterintuitive to what actually science says.
Right.
But if you strip away what's actually happening, it's like, okay, well, why did this person eat more food and lose weight? This client I have, and it's like, well, because of this energy flux that you're talking about. It's because they're doing more. You just can't figure out how to measure what they're doing, but you need to, so you can point out to them and teach them, like, what's really going on here.
For sure. And it always goes back to the athlete equation. And, Jason, everyone in the company that I work with, we always bring up Michael Phelps. The days when he was, eating, 12, 15,000 calories a day and still, ripped like Rambo, so to speak. And there's no way he was burning 15,000 calories. So, they said he was in a cold pool that was changing things. But the athletes in the world, they're usually some of the healthiest people. if they're recovering properly, and not if they're, killing themselves with drugs and doing things like that. But they're also the leanest and sometimes healthiest metabolically speaking, and they're also eating the most calories. So that's a kind of hard thing to wrap your head around where, listen, so you need to eat more to be leaner. And yes, that's the case, but you also have to move more. You have to do more, and you have to increase that BMR a little bit up, or keep increasing it compared to what you were doing before when you were reducing it. So you're kind of like working with how the body response versus working against it when you're dieting. And that's the simple reason why, extended diets without, periodization and breaks, they don't work. And the studies are very clear on that total. And I think also, what's going on is we're looking for a quick fix. Everyone wants the fast route, and our reliance on technology is even worse. So we're moving even less. And listen, I'm the worst candidate of that. I sit in my man cave typing away all day. And sometimes if I don't get out and walk for an hour at lunchtime, I'll be sitting all day. And it's not good. And I try to walk the walk that I'm working with clients and teaching coaches, but it gets hard. So I understand it. You have to be mindful of that aspect and, make some changes to move in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I think I actually had a conversation with somebody about that recently. It's like, when I say I am a coach, people automatically assume I'm highly active. And it's like, I'm behind my computer most of the time nowadays. So it's like, I have reminders in my phone, get up and go walk for 10 minutes just to get my steps in, go, if it's nice out, get some sun. But let's kind of dive into, energy flux a little bit deeper. I'd love for you to really kind of, I know we kind of already touched on it a bit, but I think energy flux, G-Flux, this whole concept of how to accomplish that and why calories in versus calories out isn't always the answer. It can be pretty confusing to people, especially because most people just rely on calories in versus calories out as the answer to everything. So if you could explain a little bit deeper about this idea of flux and what you want people to be doing, and maybe how they can implement that post-diet to not gain the weight back or actually keep losing weight, so on and so forth. That would be, I think, super helpful for the audience.
For sure. So let's take it one step back and let's explain how energy comes out of the body. Okay. So basically there's 4 different categories that a person can expend energy. One is, we talked about it already. It's called their basal metabolic rate. Just think that consumes about 70% of a person's calories. And those are unconscious controls, things like breathing, heart rate, nervous system, digestion. We have zero control over that. Next is what's called exercise activity thermogenesis. It's an acronym EAT, if you want to think about it. Believe it or not, that's only 10% of a person's calorie total. Now, you can change that a lot by how much time you exercise, but it's also the law of diminishing returns. Just because you exercise more doesn't mean you're actually going to burn that many more calories. So you can't necessarily increase it to 70% versus 10%. Okay, we also have what's called thermic effective feeding. So think about the energy that you burn off eating food. And, and that is, no
worries.
I think, sorry about that. Pick it back up. And then we also have, think the food the energy you break down through consuming food. And the body has very little control over that. You can add more protein and fibers. That will change it a little bit, but it's very negligible. And then the last part is NEAT, which is called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So if you like acronyms, there's BMR, there's EAT, there's TEF, and then there's NEAT. Okay, so what do we have control over the most? Well, we have control over our exercise, and we have control over NEAT, and very minimal control over how much energy we burn through what we eat. So where do we want to focus? Okay, well, again, how many people have time to train more than they already are during the day? It's hard enough to get in one session, let alone add in more or two, unless you're like an athlete. So that's not realistic for the everyday population. So where do we go with regards to the last two? So we have exercise, activity, thermogenesis. We're kind of scratching that one off. And then we have thermic effective feeding and then NEAT. Okay, so those are the 2 areas that we really have a lot of control over. And that is the 2 biggest aspects of what's called a person's energy flux. Okay, so energy flux is pretty much take the calories in minus calories out and flip it. Now all we're doing is we're saying calories burned plus calories consumed. So just think all you're doing is changing that minus sign to a plus sign. It makes all the difference in the world. So if you guys are thinking about numbers, let's just think about a person that's burning 3,000 calories and eating 3,000 calories. Okay, so there's a total flux, energy flux of 6,000 calories, where let's just say we have someone that's been dieting for a while. They might be eating 1,500 calories and burning 2,000 calories, okay, or 2,000. So, or let's just make it easy. Let's just say they're homeostasis, they're burning 2,000 and eating 2,000. That's a 2,000 calorie difference from the high flux to that lower flux state. Okay, that's basically those extra calories. They're kind of hardwiring the body away from those mechanisms that are saying, oh, ramp down a person's BMR, ramp up hunger. And it's doing the exact opposite, but it's burning more of those calories because the body's used to those calories coming in. So this is where it gets to be kind of important in terms of how much a person moves, you know? And like, I don't know, do you ever talk about like, is this a concept that you ever work with your coaches in terms of like really maximizing or kind of explaining this concept?
Absolutely, because I think that especially for people who are two scenarios of people that come to us come to mind. One, the person who has quote unquote tried it all and is just frustrated that nothing is working, or the person who has yet to try anything but knows they need a lifestyle change. To me, most coaches, their first response is to put them in a deficit, get them to lose weight, right? We have a structure in our coaching that we never put somebody into a deficit right away. And a lot of times it's fascinating because we call it a primer phase. And it's almost like we're getting you ready for the deficit if we're going to put you in one. We're getting you ready to diet so you're in a healthier place. But more often than not, you don't even need to go into a big deficit afterwards because this happens, right? You increase their calories, you get them to a good place. They start moving more. You give them a training program that supplements that movement. They're eating healthier. So the thermic effect of food goes up naturally. And now all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm losing weight, but we haven't even started the progressive phase yet. We're still in the primer phase. And I'm like, cool, stay there as long as we can, milk it, you know? So it's definitely something we talk to our coaches about because I think it's so valuable for new clients coming in.
Yeah. And it's again, it's laying that foundation with people. And it's an aspect of coaching, or let's say nutrition or health coaching, that people really don't focus on. And it should be like one of the primary things, especially if someone's not moving a lot. But, you know, I would say a lot of times, look at the people who do get in a lot of steps per day or do move a lot for work. They're very rarely the people that have big bellies or are overweight or have metabolic issues. It's because their flux is higher. And, you know, there's one study that they did, it was pretty powerful, where it was just 177 nurses that they took. And basically they found the nurses who were more fidgeters, like literally a couple of them were like clicking pens and like clicking their legs. They burned up to 800 calories more per day. Okay, now again, there was also some more movement in there, but 800 calories a day for extra movement is a lot. Okay, yeah. That's going to keep someone lean versus someone not getting that at all. I always use, when I used to work at the clinic, I would always track my calories, and even getting in a car and driving to the clinic and being sitting with patients throughout the day, just going to work, I would burn on average 300 to 400 more calories per day than what I do now working from home. And those calories add up. You know, 400 calories times 7 days, that's 2,800 calories. You know, that's 700 calories away from a pound, so to speak. So they do go, it is important. And, you know, granted, I'm not going to say it's not annoying to sit by someone that's clicking their pen. Yeah, you want to drive you nuts, or even watching someone like knock out or crack their knee a million times. But that is why I believe weight loss is so hard, is because we are just sitting around too much and maybe going to the gym for 45 minutes when the rest of the time we're sitting on our butts. Yeah. And then we're eating less. And what we're doing through all these efforts is we're just slowing down our basal metabolic rate when we need to be ramping it up. That's definitely what our ancestors did. They moved around, they foraged for food, they had chores, they weren't sedentary. You know, I make a joke. It's like we're the most sedentary species on the planet besides sloths anymore. Maybe koala bears too. They're pretty lazy. But overall, that's where it kind of needs to start. And again, it's why is this happening? Okay, think about evolution. You know, we were not designed to run around really skinny and lean, because that did not create a sustainable or healthy person that could make it through the harsh winters or bring life into this world. If you're a female per se, you need fat. You need fat to say, listen, the body is ready for this pregnancy so we can continue and take the pregnancy all the way to term. So when someone is lean and they lose weight, the body fights it. What does it do? Increases hunger, primarily through ghrelin, raises the hunger hormone and decreases leptin. It decreases thyroid hormone production, so you're not burning as much. And it also reduces thyroid conversion, which takes place in the tissues. And then it also, I don't know how they quantify this, but it reduces the amount of energy that you burn through NEAT, through your chores and moving around per day. So that's why it's a concept that, like you said with your coaches, it should be something that's really foundational. And if someone's not doing it, that needs to be improved first versus, putting someone into a deficit. And there's so many people out there that are just going through this vicious cycle of not understanding that they're fighting their own, physiology, as I like to say.
Yeah, and even in the scenarios where we do need to go into a little bit of a deficit, I always encourage people to try to maintain those habits that increase NEAT in the first place, because during metabolic adaptation, which is the process of your body adapting to a lower intake, essentially, one of the main things that's happening to drop your BMR and cause this metabolic adaptation is your NEAT, your movement, your fidgeting, everything lowers substantially. So not only is your body adapting to a lower caloric intake, you're just burning less because you're taking in less. So even in the cases where we do need to go to a deficit, I'm always the first to say, hey, like, watch, if you have an Apple Watch, see how much you stand, see how much you step. You really can't track clicking pens or blinking your eyes and fidgeting, but try to pay attention to those things. I know for me, I'm lucky enough to do a lot of video calls and interviews. So if I'm in a diet, I notice me slow down when I'm talking, and I use less gestures, and so I listen better and I talk less, but I try to pay attention to that, because I'm like, I need to make sure that I'm not going down too far when I do temporarily place in the diet. And just for reference for people, like for me, I'm actually in the process of, I'm in a deficit right now, but it's like such a minimal deficit, I don't even feel it. And but I am cutting. That's the goal right now. But I haven't been in a deficit for over a year. It's been so long, and I've just been focusing on eating more and training more and building muscle and things like that. And now it's finally time for me to be like, okay, I'm going to go into a deficit for a little bit and try to cut up a little bit. It's a temporary thing that's implemented in, and because it's temporary, I think it's more productive. It's the repeated attempts that really screws people up and doesn't lead to the result they want it to lead to.
For sure. And again, it like you said, it's not that deficits are the enemy. It's just constant dieting over time when someone's already in a lower flux state. Mm-hmm. And that's why this concept is so important. And, when I work with coaches, it's something I hammer home with them so much, is that as a coach, if you're working with clients, you need to be able to explain to them how that energy in minus energy out equation, why that doesn't work. Why they can't come to you, and why you can't put them in a deficit, because they're going to want an explanation, and you maybe can't go through thermic effective feeding and BMR and use all these big terms. You have to be able to break it down in layman's terms so that they understand it. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. And telling them that, yes, repeated diets, when you've been doing this over and over again, you're just, digging yourself a bigger hole. And, to understand how it works at a cellular level, or let's just say system level, is important to get clients on board and get them to buy in.
So we've touched on actually quite a bit already with just the problems with this CICO model. They call it calories in, calories out. Mm-hmm. And we've talked a little bit about how to increase energy flux as far as training, caloric intake, and then obviously NEAT, some that you can control, some that you might not be able to. Is there anything else we're missing that people need to understand about energy flux?
Yeah, I think the difference, I would say that the main differences between the two are huge. So what are the benefits of having that high energy flux? Think about that athlete that's eating a lot and it's training a lot. But for the everyday person, we want to equate that to a mixture of more needs and leisure activities and some exercise and eating more calories to kind of offset that and offset the recovery. Well, you're going to have increased fat loss, like you were talking about right now. Your body's primed for that deficit. So when you do actually go into a deficit, your body's like, okay, we'll actually tap into that fat. You're going to be more what's called metabolically flexible. able to transition from burning sugar and glucose from your meals to running on stored fat. These are things that people who are sugar burners, who are also eating low calories, that transition between the two doesn't happen. Then, what else is going to happen? You're going to be more satiated with your meals. You're not going to be starving and looking for, going into the refrigerator 10 times, staring at the exact same food that you've seen the 10 previous times. There's going to, obviously be less hunger pains, and you're going to have overall a faster metabolism. Now, when you break it down, increasing flux, like, okay, so what are the areas that you can improve? Well, yes, you can increase exercise time. We talked about that, but that's not realistic for a large majority of the population today. We can increase daily calorie intake. Sure. How do we exactly do that? We'll cover a couple of ways, which seem to be the best. And then we have to increase, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, or that NEAT. So how can you start? Where's the best place to increase NEAT? Well, I would say even 10,000 steps a day when we're sitting on our butt all day is not enough. Okay? I put people into categories, and I try to really, aim for the stars and say, my ultimate goal for steps is about 15,000 for people per day. Now, not everyone's going to hit that, but if I give them a higher mark, at least they're striving towards something versus, hitting 10,000 in the first 3 hours and saying, I don't got to move it anymore throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So usually that 15,000 step goal, and just be mindful of, when you're on a phone call, you can go outside. Granted, weather is going to be permitting, but just movement. I've had people make an investment in under the desk treadmills, under the desk bikes, little things that you can do. It's a small investment that pays off big time, especially if you're someone that's working at home, which a lot of people might be in the very near future. Or you add in about 30 to 45 minute leisure walks throughout the day. That's usually enough to get a person's NEAT at to that level where they're burning an additional 600-700 calories per day, which is equating to that 1 pound a week when you add up calories, a little bit more. Now, when it comes to calorie intake, what do you want to do? Well, we want to kind of kill two birds with one stone. We want to work on increasing the thermic effect of food as much as possible, even though it's kind of negligible, but that does keep a person more satiated. But we also want to add more calories. So what are the two best categories to do that? Well, one, you want to add more protein. Okay, that's going to be the best because overall the total calories are not going to be hitting your bottom line because that has the highest thermic effect of feeding, which is about 25 to 30%. And then you add in more fibrous vegetables, okay, not starchy vegetables, things that are higher in fiber, because actually the higher fiber foods they have the highest thermic effect of feeding, period. So adding those two in. So if you can add those three categories, that's probably the best way for the average person to increase their energy flux throughout the day. So they're offsetting those mechanisms of ramping the body's BMR down, or their basic metabolic rate.
Totally. One thing that came to mind that I think is, and I want to dive a little bit more into what you just said too, because I was going to ask about, sometimes I recommend, and we'll just go right into this. Sometimes I recommend obviously protein because it's the highest thermic effect food. I always recommend the fiber, and I'll often lean on, and most people do this during a reverse or increase in calories, lean on carbs more than fats, because they're a little more thermic and they're probably going to apply more to this energy flux. Like you take in carbs, your body is going to use that as energy, whether it's more work and the time you have in the gym, whether it's more movement, so on and so forth. And I kind of find that once you hit a certain point of fats, it's not that it's pointless to increase further, but I try to tell people because they'll ask about hormones and fats help hormones, and I say yes, and they're like, so more fats equals more testosterone? I'm like, you're not going to have astronomical levels by eating hundreds of grams of fat. So I'd rather get your fats to a place where you are healthy and sustaining that health, and then let's ramp carbs up because that's probably going to apply more to the G-Flux theory. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So I would say majority of the time when I'm using these classifications, I'm talking to more of the average population who's probably going to be more insulin resistant versus the athlete type. Now, if someone is more of an athlete type that's burning more, or their body's ready to do so, then yeah, carbohydrates would still want to be fit in there. But someone who is sitting on their butt, they actually don't need more carbs. Okay, that's not the best way because that's going to cause more blood sugar swings. It's going to possibly cause more negatives. When it comes to increasing fats, the problem with increasing fats is it's very hard to increase the amount of fats in the healthy range and not get all saturated fats. Okay, so many times, so many people think, oh, I'm going to go keto or I'm going to eat lots of fats, and they eat all these saturated fats. And too much saturated fats compared to the omega-3s and the monosaturated, that creates a pro-inflammatory state in the body, and it can cause some other issues with cholesterol and things like that. So it's very hard to do that when you're eating, let's say, 80, 90 grams of fat of olive oil and macadamia nuts and walnuts and things like that. People just don't do it. So what do they lean towards? They lean towards the peanut butters. They lean towards the meat. They lean towards the bacon and the butter coffees to hit their totals. And those are areas where things can be problems. And there's the whole idea of combining fats and carbs where, that's also going to cause an insulin surge. So sometimes that could be a negative as well that you have to keep in consideration. So I would say for the general normal clients, which is like a Mrs. Jones, who's a mom, who's trying to lose weight, who, is the stereotypical nutrition coaching client, that the protein and the fiber is where you want to increase those calories. And then yes, once those are at a sufficient range, obviously you don't want a female eating 300 grams of protein, then it will be, good quality carbs, low glycemic fruit and starchy vegetables and things like that.
Yep, I would 100% agree. And I think the majority of our clients are not necessarily athletes, but they train hard. So for us, it's kind of, it's almost always, it's still in that order, but it's almost always carbs versus fats. But again, if somebody's fats are too low, that's the first thing we increase because we can't leave them down there. But that makes a lot of sense. I think with the idea of energy flux, it's just hard for people to break out of the norm, which is calories in versus calories out. And it's hard for them. Some people crave a deficit, which sounds so weird, but they almost like, you've probably had this, they like ask to be put in a deficit. They want to be in a deficit because something about a deficit equals success to them, yet they go through this vicious cycle of repeatedly getting back to a situation where they're asking for a deficit again because they gained weight back.
Yeah, and I said that's like the dogma of the nutrition industry. And it's so funny, I use that term now, but I remember the first time someone told me, I'm like, what the heck does dogma mean? I mean, and it's just like a mantra that's said over and over again that people believe it's true, even though it doesn't really have any factual basis behind it. Or as I like to call the gym mayor. The gym mayor might tell you something at the gym, and because he's so assertive and he's so confident in it, you believe it, even though there's no facts behind it.
Yeah.
That's kind of why people are, and it's the media, it's social media influencers. And, again, look at people who are taking pictures with their shirts off. They don't look like that every day of the year. That's photo shoot day. And that's what people are aspiring to. So,
well, and like something I brought up the other day on a podcast was, it kind of relates to this. And, we do have research on the calories in versus calories out model. But I always ask, like, number one, who are those studies done on? And number two, how long are those studies performed for? And the thing I brought up the other day was metabolic adaptation. Somebody was asking about that. And I was like, the only problem I have with that research is, yes, it does give us some information and it gives us some theoretical basis to kind of start kind of processing when we apply this in coaching. But the average person that I'm worried about with metabolic adaptation is not the person that's in that study. The person in that study is a middle-aged sedentary male who doesn't train and has never dieted before, and they put him in a big deficit and they just watch what happens, right? I'm getting the person who does 5 days a week of CrossFit, has been trying to diet for the last 3 years off and on, losing, gaining. She's stressed out. She has 3 kids, busy job, like doesn't sleep enough. Do a study on that person. You know what I mean? It's different. And I know that's kind of out of the context of Flux in a sense, but I think it kind of applies to the calories in versus calories out. It's not that it doesn't work, and there are studies to prove it, but even great studies are still temporary. They're not,
right.
Nobody has a study on somebody in a deficit for 3 years and straight,
Yeah.
Some of the longest studies done on dieting are like the protein overfeeding studies, where like people overhead fed protein for a full year, and then one was 2 years, just to basically prove that you can't get hurt by eating too much protein, even though
Right.
it didn't show any benefit whatsoever as well. But ever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've kind of been ragging on the calories in minus calories out. And don't get me wrong, let me take a step back. In order to lose weight, you have to burn more than you're consuming.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. But where does your body fall in that line in terms of how much you're burning is the big determining factor. And like you said, what's your typical client? Well, you have a client that's coming to you that is possibly overtraining, is stressed out, is under eating. Those are all stressors. Those are all things that are going to actually, ramp down a person's basic metabolic rate when they really need more food in order to recover properly. And it's just like it's just a vicious cycle that it's very hard to break people out of. And even you can explain it in the easiest terms. So sometimes people, they need to hit their, let's just say, their rock bottom before they're finally willing to listen and say, okay, just lead me where I need to go. And sometimes that needs to happen, especially some of the hardcore, some of the old, I would say bodybuilder prep diet people are some of the hardest ones to let go of their old diets. So they're tilapia and asparagus and brown rice type of situations.
Yeah.
But those are some of the people who are the worst, let's say metabolic adaptation type of clients. So they need it the most.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, cool. We've covered quite a bit, man. This is going to be really helpful for people. And I think it's a good take on the calorie model because it doesn't, and like you just said, I don't want people to think we're like constantly shitting on calories in versus calories out.
Not at
Because
all. Not at all.
not at all. It's just understanding it better. And I think that's the power of this podcast is understanding what it is, when it's applicable, and how you could potentially do something different. And if people are interested in recomposition, for example, like I want to burn fat and build muscle, a high energy flux is the best way to go. Train
Yep.
more, eat more, and recover more. Like you do those three things, you will get leaner and build muscle. But while we're on this entire topic of energy flux, calories in versus calories out, why we gain fat, why we can't keep it off, is there anything that we haven't covered that you still want to bring up on the podcast?
No, I just think, I know there's a lot of coaches that listen to this, and this is a concept that is important with regards to using it as like a teachable moment with clients and going forward. Because just like a coach, you can't really, or let's just say you shouldn't be applying things to clients if you don't understand how it works or if you haven't experienced it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's certain diets or anything I tell the coach I work with, don't do anything, don't advise something to a client until you've done it. You've experienced it. You've gone through it. And the same kind of concept goes for explaining some of these, they might be deeper rooted concepts, but they're pretty much, they're pretty fundamental in going forward. And listen, I'm not going to say that I could have explained them all perfectly when I started either, but the best way sometimes to do it is actually speak it. Like speak it to yourself in the mirror and listen to yourself. You're like, wow, did I sound like I knew what I was talking about? Or did I sound like I had no clue? Because that's how you get perfect, or let's say how you get better at doing these things and really kind of having yourself wrap your head around these concepts. The more you repeat it, it becomes, fundamental in your way of thinking.
Yeah, and that's exactly why you also have to dig into everything you hear. If even this idea of energy flux, like as you hear us talk about it, go do research after this. Like when you hear somebody talk about calories in versus calories out, go research it. When you hear somebody talk about intermittent fasting, go research it. Like there's so much information, there's so much research, and there's also so many different interpretations of everything inside the nutrition space. So the individuals who are going to be the best coaches are the ones that seek out that information constantly. And that goes for the people listening who are not coaches and you just want a better body. You should be digging in this too, because if we consider like true sustainability of fat loss, of a goal, of a physique, or anything like that, I believe it comes down to education. If you can learn what's going on in your body and how your body's going to respond and adapt, you will be able to sustain the result you achieve 10 times better than if you did not. And that's the problem with a lot of the crash diets where people actually, this 85 to 90% that regain weight. And I want to say a third of that actually gains even more than where they were at beforehand. So that regain keeps going and they end up heavier than when they started.
Yep.
And it comes from uneducated crash course dieting, with zero exit strategy after the diet is done. And so for everybody listening, our goal is always, and that's why we do these podcasts together. It's really just to educate you so you can do this on your own better, trying to build coaches.
Yep. 100%. And, we're all learning as we go. And we have to learn from sources that are, as I like to say, getting their hands dirty out with clients and applying this stuff. So you can, there's a lot of smart people out there who really have not applied what they're teaching or what they're using. It's like the business professor in the universities. They never actually run a business, but they teach how to do it.
Yeah.
It's not very effective.
Funny story. I actually, before I got into fitness and nutrition, I went to school for business, and I had my eye on the fitness program because I had just rehabbed from a knee injury, and I ran into the guy that ran that program, and he saw me doing something in the school gym and was kind of like, man, you should come to my class. It's called, I have a class called functional movement. You would love it. Like it's,
Right.
going over all this stuff. That kind of just blew him off. And I was sitting in class and I remember raising my hand. It was business 101. Raise my hand. Yes, Cody. How many businesses have you owned? None. And I was like, so why are you teaching us how to start a business? I don't get it. And he had no answer. I literally got up and left. And I ended up popping into that functional movement class. And then I forged my dad's signature to change my degrees. Weeks later, I told him because I still wasn't really in shape or knew much. So me changing my degrees to this was kind of like just a stupid move to them. Obviously it worked out for the better, but it's hilarious because that same exact thing, like asking him that and him saying that he never ran a business, like shocked me. And I was like, I can't sit through this. This doesn't.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you can tell when someone doesn't have the real world experience to answer a question, or as I like to say, it's always good to apply in the coaching sense, what worked for a client in your past, or what you saw results with yourself. Throw yourself underneath the bus. I made this mistake, or I learned this the hard way with someone else. That's how you can really tell if people have been, actually applying what they're teaching or what they're trying to show you for a long period of time.
Yeah, 100%. Well, cool, man. Let's wrap it up there. I think that's a really good way to round out this topic. Nutrition Coaching Institute, wellfits.com, and then I think it's at Travis Zipper on Instagram. I'm going to link all those in the description for them to check out. Wellfits is his nutrition coaching mentorship, which I have multiple coaches in, can't say enough about. And the Nutritional Coaching Institute is the certification program. If you're a coach and you want to get certified in nutrition, it's the go-to spot to do it. All my coaches have the certifications, most of them more than just one through them too, because you guys have an array of different certifications you can get. So go check that stuff out, guys. The links will be in the description. Travis, thank you for your time, man.
No problem. Always fun.